Hey guys, this is Illusion Podfics, and we're back with Birds of a Feather by Howls_Library. This is Chapter 6. Peter didn't know exactly where Nightwing was taking him, but out of all the places, he did not expect to be taken to a loft apartment in Uptown. Who lives here? Peter asked. I did, Nightwing responded, throwing his keys into a small basket near the entrance. They didn't come into the apartment building in a very conventional way. Peter had gone through vents before, but having someone carry him through vents was another thing. He debated just telling Nightwing that he could do it himself, but he also didn't want to embarrass the vigilante for assuming that Peter couldn't climb on walls. Peter was more impressed that Nightwing was able to carry a teenage boy through a vent that size, all while not having any real powers himself. Did? Peter asks. Yeah, when I first moved out, I stayed here to get myself situated before I started patrolling through Bloodhaven, Nightwing responds. He remembers reading briefly about Nightwing's escapades in Bloodhaven in one of the old newspapers at the shelter. Peter thought it was pretty admirable to move out of his hometown just to take care of a whole city by himself. Nightwing sat down on a couch in the living room and patted the seat next to him for Peter to sit as well. Peter moves over and places his things on the other couch before sitting down next to the vigilante. Peter, how did you know that members of my family have been stalking you? Nightwing asks him. He had a serious but calm look on his face. Peter could still sense the concern for him, even through the mask. Peter took a deep breath and fiddled with his thumbs. Well, I kind of have this quirk, more like several quirks, that help me with sensing that kind of stuff, Peter said. Nightwing looked completely unfazed. Peter should have assumed he wouldn't really have a reaction to Peter having powers. Nightwing nodded, urging him to continue. It's a long story, like one that goes back to people before I got in Gotham, involves a bunch of people you don't know and probably will never know. I was 14, so it's been about 3 years since it happened. Anyways, I am sort of a vigilante where I'm from. Peter gave him a grin, hoping for a good reaction. He had been debating this whole week on whether he should say anything about himself to the bats and birds. He thought of all the pros and cons. He had surveyed their work for the past 7 days and had gotten the impression they were good people. Peter also came to the conclusion that he didn't have anything to lose by asking for help. What was the point in hiding and stalling when he could potentially get home by making friends with the heroes in this universe? Nightwing nodded slowly at Peter's response. Okay, so theories on our end are panning out, Nightwing said softly. Theories? Peter asked in confusion. Yeah, we kind of had theories about you. Where you were from, what your powers were, how to help you, etc. The vigilante spews. Peter chuckles. He was the talk of the town for the BatFamily. Something in him felt warm to know that all these people cared about him without really knowing him at all. For all they knew, he could have been a huge multiversal threat. Tim and Connor are the reason you have powers, isn't it? Peter asks them. Nightwing raises an eyebrow at him. I figured that's the only way you could know. Connor has super strength, right? He almost pinned me down, and I saw how worried he looked. How he started talking to Tim afterwards, Peter says. Why would you assume I know who these people are? Tim and Connor, Nightwing asks him. Peter sighed and rolled his eyes. All right, Big Bird, let's use our heads here. I figured some stuff out. You sit there. I'll tell you what I know. Then based on your heart rate, I'll tell you whether I'm right or wrong. We can make a game out of it. Peter smiles at him. Nightwing's smile falters. Wait, what? He starts, but Peter speaks over him. Barbara Gordon is Batgirl. While being the one at the library to help me when I crash-landed into Gotham, she was also the person stalking me in the south alley of GothCorp the other day. I spotted her from the ground while she was doing some sort of parkour off the alley walls. Nightwing raised his fingers to say something. Peter took a breath and smiled even bigger, raising his finger as well in protest. Jason Todd is the redhead. He was also following me up to a rooftop I was on, but had to interfere with the girl getting mugged and almost got caught by me in the process. Newsflash, he did. I saw him. Of course I only did because I kind of have spider-like abilities because of the radioactive bite, so he shouldn't blame himself, Peter gasped. I'm sorry, wait, what? Nightwing started. And Tim Drake is Red Robin, right? That one is only a hunch because I didn't sense his heartbeat well enough with my sense the first time I saw him, but the way he held himself and when we played hide and seek just felt like Tim, you know what I mean? I could feel it in a way, Peter said. You played hide and seek? Nightwing stopped trying to interrupt Peter since he was on a rampage. There were 3 other people that have been stalking me, and I don't think I've met them in person yet since there were no familiarities. I could point out specifically a teenage girl and a young boy, and you, Peter said confidently. Well, yes, but Nightwing tried to speak again. How did I do, Dick? Well, you sort of... Nightwing paused, realization spreading across his face. Peter smiled even wider. I got you, didn't I? Peter said smugly. Barbara and Jason gave me a name when I woke up at the library the first day. Dick. I thought Jason was just calling me a dick, but Barbara later corrected me by saying she had called her friend Dick to come and meet me. Jason referred to this person as a tanner and more annoying version of me, or at least I assumed that's what he meant. I just had to take a guess in choosing between Dick being either you or Robin, and well, Robin is not as tan as you. Peter took a deep breath. Nightwing was stunned to silence. I did good. Your heartbeat says I did good. I know. Hold your applause, Peter says with a sassy, toothy grin. Nightwing laughed. Peter hoped it was a good laugh. You're something else, Peter Parker. Nightwing smiles at him. Don't worry, I told you my secret, so the least I could do is keep yours. Besides, you said you were going to help me, and in order to do that, I need to trust you, and I can only do that if I know who you are, Peter said. Nightwing nodded at him. I went by Spiderman in my universe. Like I said, bit by a radioactive spider that gave me spider powers. I manufactured my own webs, though, but besides that, super strength, walking on walls, flexibility, keen senses, and sight, fast and agile, the whole package. Now you know who I am, Peter shared. Dick looked at Peter fondly. His whole rant reminded him that Peter was just a teenager. No matter how smart Peter was for figuring all of this out on his own, Peter just seemed like a kid who needed a friend. Peter, I want to show you what I look like, if that's okay with you, Dick asked him. Peter smiled at him and nodded. Dick had been thinking about whether there was a visible connection that Peter was going to be able to see if he showed him who he looked like. There was a pit in his stomach just at the thought of it. So, my name, like you said, is Dick, but that's short for my real name. Dick looked at Peter, trying to read his face. My name is Richard Grayson. Dick's words came out slowly. He could see a small spark of recognition in Peter's eyes. He didn't know if the name had any connection or rang any bells for Peter, but he wanted to make sure before showing Peter his face. Just by Peter's reaction to his name alone, he was grateful he was easing into showing Peter what he looked like. He didn't know what Peter's relationship with his parents back home was like, since he hadn't mentioned them. He also didn't want to send Peter into some sort of shock. Do you know anyone by that name in your universe? Dick asked him nervously. Peter looked at him. His smile formed a thin line. Well, my grandparents' last name was Grayson. I never got to meet them, though. They passed away in a freak accident when my dad was just a kid. He was like 8 or something, Peter said. Dick winced at the story of this version of his life. He prepared himself for what Peter was going to say. My dad, his name was Richard, but he took my mom's surname, Parker, since he didn't like the memories of his parents' death and the whole scandal it caused. They were famous performers, like, really famous apparently, I guess. I never knew him as Richard Gray. Peter stopped talking. He looked up at Dick. Dick slowly took his cowl off his eyes. Peter's eyes had already begun shaking a bit as he had been telling this story. As his cowl was off, Peter looked at him as though he was trying to memorize his face. The boy put his hands on the side of Dick's face. Dick didn't know whether he was getting emotional, but Peter quickly pulled his backpack over and opened it. He shuffled through what looked like a wetsuit and pulled out a small photo. He handed it to Dick. The photo was of Dick. He looked a bit younger, but he had a young boy, maybe about 5 years old, in his arms, and a woman was standing next to him with her head on his shoulder. He looked up at Peter. That's my dad, Richard Parker, and my mom, Mary Parker. Dick looked down at the picture, then back up at Peter. And that's me. Peter pointed to the young boy in the photo. Dick was smiling at the photo. Peter looked adorable and so happy. Dick, my parents died the week after this photo was taken. Peter dropped a bomb on Dick as he looked up at Peter in shock. In Peter's universe, he was dead? Peter was an orphan? He knew that his aunt had just passed away recently, and now it is making more sense as to what Peter was saying when he said he had no one to go home to. His parents were gone, his aunt was gone. You're actually alone, aren't you? You meant what you said, Dick asked him. Peter looked out the loft windows, a clean view of the city. Yeah, my Uncle Ben died when I was 13, about 6 months before I was bitten. I don't have anyone else in my immediate family. My mentor and practical surrogate father, Tony Stark, died in an off-planet battle to save our universe. That happened like a year ago. Peter looked like this conversation was hurting him. Dick quickly hugged Peter. He had so many things running through his head. He could do it. He could. He could be Peter's father. He already was, but he could take Peter with him to Bloodhaven. They could live together and be a family. Dick was starting to plan it all out in his head. He could help Peter get into a good universe. He could take him to see the world. He could... The explosion was so loud that it cracked some of the windows in the loft. Dick grabbed Peter and lunged himself away from the window. There was force in his legs as he felt himself push with a lot of momentum. He must have overshot because they had hit the wall on the other side of the room. Dick was hanging from the wall as arms were clinging to his biceps. He looked up to see Peter holding him up while standing on the wall. Oh, Dick said, looking at Peter. The kid was serious about the spider powers. Sorry, looks like we kicked off at the same time. That's my bad, Peter says to him sheepishly. As Dick looks back outside, he could see the gas and light show. The familiarity sunk into him. The Mad Hatter, Dick whispered as he quickly put on his cowl. He started to move towards the window, but Peter grabbed his arm. Wait, Dick. Weird question, but before you jump out of the window and leave me here, do you have a server with outsourced tech I can connect something to? Something connected to a private network with an active IP relay that has a strong enough signal to support a Bluetooth connection indefinitely? Peter asked him. Dick wasn't Tim, or Barbara, but he did understand what Peter was referring to after being around them long enough. He had a small outlet of the Bat computer here in his apartment, and quickly showed Peter where it was. As he did so, Peter pulled out the wetsuit he had seen him looking through earlier, and started typing away on the computer. The black lines that strung through the red and blue suit glowed white, then blinked green. Peter started stripping down his clothes. Dick raised his hands to cover his eyes. Wait, Peter, I know I'm your dad, but I didn't think we were going to have this talk till... Dick whispered, but Peter gave him a look, signaling him to stop talking as he stepped into the suit with his feet. Peter tapped the spider insignia on the chest, and the suit started to attach itself to Peter until he was covered. Okay, ready, Peter said to him while standing with his fists on his hips. Oh, it feels good to be back. Spiderman is so back, baby, Peter shouted out into the night. Dick saw Peter refill something on his wrists, and then look up at him. Ready, Nightwing? Peter asked. What do you think you're doing? Why are you just like... Dick asked. I'm not just going to let you leave me here and have all the fun. I know I'm supposed to be focused on getting home, but I'm assuming this is one of those villains in Gotham that I've read about. The least I can do is help out while I'm stuck here. Fill me in on the details on the way over. I can handle myself, don't worry, Peter assured him. Dick paused before sighing, realizing he didn't have time to debate with Peter or compare him to another teen hero, even if it made him worry. All right, Spider-Man, let's see if you can keep up, Dick smirked as he jumped out of the shattered window. Peter followed right after him. I should be telling that to you, old man, Peter yelled back as they plummeted to the ground. Dick grappled onto the next building over as he began to swing to the rooftop. As he saw Peter shoot out what must be the webs he made, Peter was graceful and he was doing flips through the air next to Dick. Dick took it as a challenge and started to show off. I see where I get it from, Peter yelled. Speak through the comms, Dick responded after receiving a ping from the Bat computer that a new device had been connected. Oh, cool. You have comms connected through that computer, Peter asked Dick, finally being able to speak clearly through the connection. Yeah, well, that computer is the Bat computer, so we kind of all use it a lot, Dick said back. Speaking of which, Alfred, can you book full window repairs at my loft in Uptown? It would mean the world to me, Dick said. Another voice spoke after about 10 seconds. Why, of course, Master Richard. Anything else? Alfred asked. Can you let the team know that the Mad Hatter is making a mess near South Uptown? Just dropped a pin. I'm going to be with a new recruit, Dick responded, flashing Peter a smile. Spider Cop reporting for duty, Peter responded over the comms in a deep, husky-like voice. Spider Cop? Dick asked. It's an inside joke. Peter shrugs at him in between swings. The least I can do is give him an explanation. A girl raises her voice at a man on the other side of the room. Wanda wouldn't have shown me without good reason. He's been missing for 2 months, she said. The man on the other side of the room was pacing by the fireplace. He was gritting his teeth and mumbling to himself. Listen, kid, you don't know why he was sent there, and you cannot trust Wanda, especially after what she tried to do to you. We thought she was dead until now, and suddenly she appears to you in a dream? It's not safe to believe anything she says, the man raised his voice back. I'm not discounting what Wanda did. She killed people, and that is unforgivable, but her actions should not get to determine Peter's fate. What do you think Peter is feeling? He's alone in a strange place and has no one, the girl shouts back. He would have had no one if I successfully did what he originally asked me to do. This is better for him. You have to believe me. I'm asking you to trust me, Strange explains. America crosses her arms and quirks her head, waiting to see what else Strange has to say. You can't even control your powers that well yet. You've barely started to get the hang of multiversal travel, let alone your speed and flight. What if you can't get back here? You are too important to lose, he gasps in between shouts. I'm too important to lose, or my powers are, she quips back. There was a pause, and that pause was all she needed. That's what I thought, she said quietly. She knew it was unfair to put Stephen in this situation and to hold him accountable for what other versions of him had done, and although she trusted him way more than any other Stevens of the multiverse, he wasn't really one to have a good streak with kids after what happened with Wanda. America, wait, that's not what America had already punched a star-shaped hole in front of her. There around it started to get sucked in. Peter does not deserve to be abandoned in another part of the multiverse. I knew you said you did the right thing and let people remember him to a certain extent, but he doesn't know that, and he deserves to know the truth. She gets ready to jump as Strange starts to cast a spell. America, I'm not going to let you do this, Strange says as he starts to send quick strands of magic to grab her. It laced itself around her ankles, abdomen, and wrists. She instantly pulls back against it. I'm no longer asking for your permission, she says as she braces herself against his magic. I'm not the same girl you found 6 months ago. I know how to defend myself, Stephen. I held off the Scarlet Witch. I can hold you off, too. She grabs onto the strands of magic wrapped around her wrists as her eyes glow white. She yanks Stephen across the room. He tries to counteract this by casting more strands of magic to grab the support beams to keep him in place, but America's fingertips glow white as well, and he loses his grip, and she slams him into the wall. He shouts on impact, breaking one of the portraits that was hanging. The magic stops abruptly, and she is let go. America looks at her hand as the glow fades. Her strength had never been that strong before. It looks like she was pulling a tissue. She looks up towards where Strange is lying. Told ya, she smirks. As she jumps into the portal, she looks back at Strange. The least you can do is help me from here in the sanctum now, she yells as the portal absorbs her and closes. Strange groans as he gets on his knees. He rubs his face and grunts to stand. America, you can't even fathom the places you'll go. You haven't even begun to touch a fraction of the multiverse, Strange whispers to himself as he looks at the mess that is now the Sanctum Hall. As America plummets through the vast open portals of the multiverse, she searches through her mind for what Wanda had shown her. It was only a process of elimination between the 18 universes she narrowed it down to. I'm coming, Peter, she says to herself before launching herself into another universe. The feeling of being back in the trenches of the verses was daunting at first, and even though America had only met Peter a handful of times, she knew that he was a good person who deserved the best after everything that had happened to him. America wondered how Peter was handling himself. Wanda had told her about Peter not necessarily being alone, and Strange was very vague on the reasoning for sending Peter to this other universe, besides it being necessary. Based on those few hints, she didn't know whether to assume that Peter was in grave danger, or he was going to hold off for a bit. She lands down on the ground of her first destination, and she takes a look around. In her mind, she was hoping that this adventure to find the missing teen would be simple and somewhat straightforward. This probably isn't the place, she muttered to herself as she waves at a cartoon person in the distance. This might take a bit more effort on her part. She steadies herself and punches a new star into the sky and flies towards it, as she begins to wonder how long this could take. Alright guys, and that is the end of Chapter 6 of Birds of a Feather by Howls_Library. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you in the next chapter.